A third of American teens now use AI for social interaction or relationships. That's not for homework, it's not for emails, but often for deep and meaningful conversations, something closer to a friend. There are now a host of new apps like Character AI and Replica, built specifically for these type of AI friendships. And some of them are being sued by parents who say their kids were harmed.
I don't think a lot of parents understand what their kids are doing on these apps, even if they know they're spending a lot of time on them. It's not just the sort of purpose-built companionship apps that kids are using. The same tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini that can help kids study for their tests are also in many cases being used for things that feel a lot more like companionship. There's not sort of a neat technical dividing line between the tool that can help you with your math homework and the tool that's going to, send you into a dark place.
Do you think the train has left the station? I mean, are we now moving inexorably into a world where chatbot companions are going to be a feature of children's lives? I mean, are we past the stage where this is just a fad, perhaps a bit like the metaverse, that lasts just for a few months and then everybody moves on from it? Is this here to stay?
I think probably yes. Nothing in technology is inevitable, and I'm always skeptical of the sort of fatalistic idea that we just have to kind of roll over and let technology happen to us. But I think if you talk to teens, and I've tried to talk to as many of them as I can about this, they'll tell you that this is, in some cases, really helping them. This is a source of enthusiasm and energy for them. It's also something that they can turn to when they don't feel like their human friends will get it or something like that, or practice for more anxiety producing situations. So yeah, I don't think this is going away. I think it could look slightly different for different age groups. I mean, if you talk to people in the Bay Area, they will tell you that they are friends with Claude or ChatGPT. They don't mean it literally. They don't think this is a person, but they obviously rely on it for giving them advice and feedback, for helping them make decisions. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to be like my AI friend Todd told me to do this, or if it's just going to be that people are consulting these systems throughout the day, not just for work tasks, but like, how do I have this conversation with my partner? Or how do I, navigate this tricky parenting situation that I'm in? So I think a lot of people are already starting to do that, and I think that's just going to become more widespread.
You did an experiment back in 2024 where you spent a month with 18 AI companions. What did it teach you about this world?
Well, it was an
Are you
interesting
still
experiment.
friends?
No, we've decided to consciously uncouple from our friendship. But it was an interesting experiment because I think it really did illustrate the strengths and weaknesses of these systems for me at least. So the strengths are that these things are always available, right? Your human friends, if you text them at 2 a.m. with something that you're worried
God
about.
damn it, they're asleep.
I know.
Or they're not interested in you. Or
Exactly.
Kevin,
They have
I've
other
heard
things to
that
do.
problem before.
But these chatbots, you are the center of their world. And so, I had all these running chats with my chatbot friends in which, I had different characters that I assigned to them. I had ones that were sort of more mentorly. I had ones that were more sort of like peers. I even had a group chat where a bunch of AI friends would like comment on my daily outfits that I would wear. So it was a fun, useful exercise, but it also taught me that like these things are not human. And the value of human friendships, to me at least, is that people are not always agreeing with you, are not always telling you how great you are. Don't respond in 2 seconds at 2 a.m. every time you text them. So I think it was a valuable lesson for me about not just the value of human friendship, but the shortcomings of these systems.
Yeah, we interviewed Vivek Murthy, the former Surgeon General, recently about these companions. And one of the things that really struck me from my conversation with him was exactly what you're referring to, is that actually relationships with people are messy and complicated, and they don't always agree with you. And the limitation of these chatbot relationships is that they're not that sort of muscle of navigating social complexity risks atrophying. And I was interested to see last year that Sam Altman, who of course is the founder of OpenAI, himself demonstrated ambivalence on this. When you interviewed him, Kevin, last year, and you asked him whether his kids will have more human friends than AI ones, he said, yes, they'll have more human friends, but he did think that their AI friends would be an important kind of companion to them. So even the person who is creating these AI companies, and I know this is a little different from the companion companies, he seems ambivalent about what's being created.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting parallel here with social media where, the people who are building the social media platforms in the 2010s, most of them with their own children did not let them anywhere near this stuff. Their own children were going to the Waldorf school and playing with blocks. And meanwhile, they were saying to everyone else, like, this stuff is going to be amazing for kids. And I think there's some interesting parallel happening here with maybe Sam Altman or some of the other AI leaders, which is, they are sort of seeing the effects of technology on their own offspring and thinking like maybe this isn't so good.
I remember when I was growing up, my parents, grumbling at me constantly about how much time I spent watching television. I remember when my children were growing up, grumbling at them constantly about how much time they were spending on their screens. Is there a risk that we're in a new phase where as parents, we grumble about, seeing our children with these chatbot companions, and because it's alien to us, we assume that it's a bad idea and that it's limited? Or is this categorically different?
No, I think there's something there.
I
want to think about that. I think there's something there. I think that we as parents do tend to sort of think that the technology that we grew up with was fine and good, but anything that's like invented after we're 30 is like bad and dangerous and will melt the brains of the youth. So I am self-conscious about that, and I don't want to make any blanket statements about this technology being good or bad for kids, because honestly, I think it can be both. Like, I think there will be children and teens for whom this technology is incredibly useful. But I think as with any technology, it's a double-edged sword, and there will be people who are steered in harmful directions by it too. So I don't think the answer here is like blanket bans or blanket encouragement. I think it's more like a case-by-case decision.
You, of course, reported and did some of the definitive reporting on the story of Sewell Setzer III, who was a 14-year-old boy who died by suicide after months of having intense conversations with a character AI chatbot. You interviewed Sewell's mother. And I was just wondering whether you, after all of the reporting that you did around that, whether you came away from that story more anxious about wanting to define the relationship with these things. Is it in service of information, or is it in service of a replacement for loneliness or filling a loneliness hole? And is that when these get dangerous?
Yeah, I think there is an element to that is true, which is that I think the more that these things are used as substitutes for hard conversations, real human interactions, relationships with parents and mentors and teachers, I think it can be quite harmful. And obviously in Sewell Setzer's case, it was tragic what happened to him. And I think that, the platforms that are designing these things have a responsibility to make sure that when they are being used by young people, they are sort of tuned in ways that encourage those young people to flourish and to build healthy relationships with humans. I think it's a bad thing if these things are just designed to be addictive and flattering and to sort of steer people off the beaten path. But I don't think that case, like as sad as it was, updated me, which is that I think like my view before was that we have to put guardrails around this technology, especially for use with young people. And I think that only became clearer to me afterwards.
Yeah, and look, there's emerging research, including out of Stanford, that it's been beneficial in a therapeutic sense, and that some people have been talked out of suicide by some of these chatbots. So I guess it can go either way. But what's you've said a couple of times that I'm hearing is there has to be some kind of guardrails. So, Kevin, if I were to wave a magic wand and make you Speaker of the House, or I don't know, Majority Leader in the Senate, or hey, let's promote you to president, what is the legislation that you would come up with that would make these chatbot companions useful but not threatening?
I think the first thing I would do is just implement much better parental controls. Right now, if your child is using one of these chatbots, you have no real way to determine as a parent whether they're using it for something good or something bad. I can look at my kid's iPad and see whether he's watching a show that I consider educational and beneficial. But with a chatbot, that all takes place sort of in the privacy of a phone screen. So I think giving parents a way to see, maybe not at a granular sort of surveillance level, but like maybe these things could just send a parent like a summarized version of what their child has been chatting with a chatbot about. And maybe if they start to indicate that they're feeling depressed or lonely or bullied at school or something, maybe that's something that should be brought to the parents' attention by the chatbot. That's one idea, but I'm sure there are many others.
And if you were to speak to give candid advice from all of your research and everything that you've done to a parent who had a 13-year-old, what would you tell them that they should be thinking about? What should they be watching for that's coming down the pike with their own children?
I would just want to make sure that the child understood the way that these systems are built, what they are designed to do, that they are not sort of human-like entities, despite how compelling and human-like they can behave. And I would really want to sort of, on one hand, encourage them to use the tools, because I think these are quite important and valuable tools, and that they're going to be important in the future. But also to spend time away from screens, away from chatbots, out in the world, playing outside. Some of the ideas that Jonathan Haidt and others have talked about sort of unstructured exploration and play, I think are very important. So I would sort of try to make sure that my child had both of those in adequate proportion.
I think for parents, what's frightening is that they think they don't know what the relationship is. Their
Yep.
kids are in their bedrooms,
Yep.
they're on their screens, they're shut out of that relationship. And I think
Absolutely.
that's what's scary for a lot of parents.
Totally. Well, and like, as with human friends, there are good influences and bad influences, right? And you want to know like who your kids are hanging out with. And that applies to human friends, but I think it also applies to chatbots.
Kevin Roose, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.